Welcome to Yahoo Finance Presents. I'm Akiko Fujita, and today we are joined by Chris Bosh. You know him as the former member of the Miami Heat, 11-time NBA All-Star, 2-time NBA champion. And Chris, it's great to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So we have to start with the NBA Finals because as we speak, we are hours away from tip-off of Game 5. Your former team, the Miami Heat, of course, down 3-1. You know the record for LeBron James in elimination games. How do you think this is all going to play out?
Well, I mean, let's be frank. They're in a very strong position. The Lakers are, and they have an opportunity to close it out. And it's kind of been one of those long, tumultuous years, and they have a very big opportunity to capitalize tonight. But one thing I know about the Heat is that they're a very scrappy team. You're going to have to beat them. It's going to be a hard-fought series, and I don't expect anything less than that tonight. So we'll see how it goes. I'm always supporting my guys. I have friends on both sides of the spectrum, so I always just want to see great competition. Everybody be healthy and just go out there and compete.
Regardless of which team wins, there's no question that the NBA has been able to pull off, at least up until now, what is a pretty incredible feat, going into the bubble with no positive cases over the last several months or so. I'm sure you've imagined at some point what it would be like to be a player inside the bubble. And I'm curious how you have been viewing how this is all played out, especially with the playoffs as a player or former player looking from the outside in.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting perspective. There's nothing but the game in the bubble. There's no distractions. And to be frank, sometimes you need distractions because if you have a tough loss, you usually go to your favorite restaurant, or I would ride around town or go over a friend's house and get things off your chest and go out there and perform the next day. Do what you need to do to empty your mind or consume your mind. Those guys in there don't have that opportunity. So just to kind of see how they've been able to continue to compete for championships in the playoffs, be competitive with each other, and still kind of see each other and not be in their homes and not have those comforts that you're used to having. I mean, I'm sure it's been a tremendous challenge on the players, but they've come this far. I think everybody will look back on this as a success. And you have to give credit to the NBA for everything that they've done. They've taken all the precautions. I don't think anybody would have believed you if you would have told them 0 tests, which is an incredible feat. But it's been great, and we'll see where they go from here.
Let's talk about your former teammate and friend, LeBron James. And there's a lot of historical comparisons that are out there, how he compares to some other players. But I'm curious how you think he has shaped the game. When you look at LeBron's career so far, what is his legacy and how do you think he's changed the game?
Well, I mean, just legacy as a basketball player is a stepping stone. I know that word legacy is so impactful throughout the culture, but, there's so much more off the court as opposed to what you do on the court. And, he's built schools, had tremendous scholarship programs for children in Northeast Ohio and Ohio, period. What he's done with the game as far as influencing the youth with his style of play, his sneakers. It's so many facets of the game that you could look at, but he's done it all just being himself. I've never been around someone who loves playing basketball as much as him. And to see him continue to thrive, continue to play at that top level. I mean, this is what he's sacrificed and worked so hard, put so much into his body and his mind, to be able to compete and do this. And a lot of people ask me, am I surprised? I'm not surprised. We all expected to be playing well into our mid to late 30s. So, you have to give credit where credit is due. He's a tremendous player and one of the all-time greats to play the game.
LeBron, of course, has led a group of players inside the bubble on the issue of social justice. And, player activism isn't necessarily new. You've talked about it before, whether it is Elgin Baylor or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We have seen them speak out individually, but it feels like the conversation has been elevated this season because of the collective action of players. What do you think has changed as a result of the activism from NBA players this season?
Well, I mean, I think, it's just reached a tipping point, not only with the players, but with America in general. Seeing another black man getting killed at the hands of police, it just drove everything over. And it was really those two in a matter of 1 week that really sent America over the top. And in that, I think it really hit close to home, not only because there is a large amount of African American males in the NBA, but Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the tragedy happened right down the street. And that really, I'm sure, put the players in a position, I think it was led by the Bucks, that eventually you have to stand up and say something because things outside of your world are happening, and to be complacent and silent and kind of stand by and let things watch without using your platform for a positive message, you wouldn't be able to justify it to your kids or to yourself later on in the future. So I'm really proud of the guys for standing up and speaking on causes and making things happen. But like I always say, that's the beginning. Now it's on all of us to continue the conversations, to continue the work that we're doing, and make sure that this is pretty much the status quo moving forward.
You've been active yourself alongside former players. You've also really pushed to make sure that college athletes can also get that day off to be able to go out and vote as well. As we approach November 3rd and the presidential election, and seeing the kind of activity that you and other players and former players have been pushing for, what would you consider a successful outcome? How would you measure the success of your activism so far?
I mean, I think it would be a year-by-year measure. I think it's one of those things to where, you can't really judge the success because just like anything that's fresh and new, there's going to be some stumbles out the gate possibly. There's going to be lessons to learn. I would just like to see it continue to grow, really. I think that's the biggest implementation in this, because year after year, we're going to get a turnaround of new student athletes and new young people that have the exercise or have the right to vote and use their exercise to vote and all those good things. So we want to make sure that, one, the education continues, and two, that people are aware of what they can do. And I think that would be a success, enabling people to understand their rights as a citizen and try to get more into it. I think that's the biggest success that could be had with this.
And in terms of speaking of sort of continuing that movement, you had the NBA Commissioner Adam Silver come out recently saying that when you look to next season, the NBA doesn't plan to have the messaging of Black Lives Matter really front and center, saying that this was kind of an exceptional situation. How much of the league's cooperation do you think has led to you elevating your voice? And what do you think about the NBA commissioner's comments there about how that was an exceptional situation, maybe going to next season, that's not necessarily going to be needed?
Well, first and foremost, you have to give credit to the WNBA players. I think they were pretty much the ones leading the charge on social reform, social justice, and things like that. They've been out front and center for quite some time. As far as the NBA is concerned, using that platform, it's just such a tremendous platform. It's such a great sport. It's always been a sport to where people unite and come together. And regardless of who you support, regardless of what you believe in, the sport has been that ground to where we can start having conversations. As far as putting things front and center, yeah, very exceptional situation. It still is a business. That's one of the things that, we always have to understand in those decisions. But to see the promotion right now, to see the support, and to see the commissioner, how he allowed the players and allowed the league and allowed everyone to kind of really use their voice. Sometimes it can be a very clashing of heads and it's disagreements, but he allows that conversation to happen by being open to listening to the players, by empowering the players to do things that they think are important. And there's always been that teamwork between the league and the commissioner and the players.
Let's talk about what you have been up to post basketball. Your career, of course, cut short back in 2016 because of a medical condition. You've talked a lot about the challenges of finding that second act. And yet here we are today talking about the release of your first single from your label, Daddy Jack Records. I'm curious what led you to music.
Man, it was kind of one of those things. I always read these self-help books. I'm an avid book reader, and I would read all these books a while back, and they would always say, follow your heart. You have to do things that you love doing. It has to speak to you. And the next thing I knew, I was talking to musicians, and I had a guitar in my hand, trying to take lessons, and I'm building up. My fingers are bleeding with building up my calluses on my fingertips, and I just started this journey, and I couldn't really describe it at the time. I just loved doing it, so I decided to really pursue that passion. I started meeting great people, producers, songwriters, engineers, scientists, great people that just took me in. And frankly, I was looking for something else outside of basketball. I had never really thought about that or even given it time because I was so consumed with being great with my craft, which was basketball. So finding something else and really falling into it and taking a deep dive has been great.
Yeah, no question. A lot of people are going to be looking to see, how you expand this second act or this career in music. Final question to you. I think there's a lot of us who have spent the last 6-7 months or so kind of reflecting on what this pandemic has taught us. And I imagine for you, you've obviously been cautious because of your medical condition, but you've also had a lot of time at home to think about where you want to take things. What's been the takeaway for you? I mean, what have you learned or what have you sort of thought of as a result of this health crisis that we've been in?
Well, really just off the top of my head, how important family is, how important it is to, I already had this philosophy anyway, but your home being your sanctuary, if you're able to do that, having a place of peace and really pouring into that and diving into that and putting in the work to ensure that happens. I'm sure everyone has really fallen on hardships during these crazy times. The pandemic is still going on. I suppose we're just learning to live with it more. But for me, it's really putting myself back into my family and really, really understanding how important it is to spend those hours with your children. We've started traditions such as like barbecuing and sitting at the table and eating together on Saturdays. Those little things like that can go a long way. And you see how important it is, with the homeschooling aspect of how important teachers are and how important molding the youth are. It's very, very important thing. I'm really, really diving into it. It's been great. We've been blessed. And, my heart goes out there for people that are struggling during this time, and hopefully, I don't know how, but hopefully we'll figure out a way how to live with this a little better.
Chris Bosh, great to talk to you today. Thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.